The new house. Sarah loved old houses, especially ones with a story. She had just moved into an old Victorian on the outskirts of a small mountain town. The realtor said it needed a little TLC, but Sarah saw charm and history in every creaking floorboard. It was a deal she couldn't pass up, even though the locals whispered about it being haunted. Chapter 2. Strange Occurrences. Within a week of moving in, Sarah noticed strange things happening. At first, it was small noises, the creak of a floorboard or the distant sound of tapping. She brushed it off as the house settling. But then she started finding things, old buttons, coins, and other trinkets, left on her doorstep. When she asked her neighbors, they all shrugged and said, "It's probably just the generator acting up." Chapter 3. The generator's demise. One stormy night, as Sarah was getting ready for bed, the power went out. She grabbed a flashlight and ventured into the basement to check the generator. It was old and rusted, and it had completely broken down. She'd have to wait until morning to call a repairman. That night, the tapping on the windows was louder than ever, but Sarah dismissed it as the wind or a branch scraping against the house. Chapter 4. Quiet for a while. With the generator dead, the strange noises stopped, the tapping ceased, and the trinkets on her doorstep vanished. Sarah thought that maybe the old generator had been causing all the disturbances. She felt relieved and began to settle into her new home, painting and decorating with newfound confidence. Chapter 5. The Return of the Tapping. A week later, the tapping returned, louder and more persistent. It was as if someone was trying to get her attention. She called the police, but they found nothing. The trinkets reappeared, but this time they were different, more personal. Sarah found a lock of hair and a note that read, "I'm watching you." Fear crept back into her heart. Chapter 6. The old woman Sarah installed security cameras around her property, hoping to catch whoever was leaving the notes. The first night, the cameras captured a shadowy figure tapping on her windows. It was an old woman with a hunched back and a creepy grin. When Sarah showed the footage to the police, they dismissed it, saying the generator might be causing electronic interference. Chapter 7. A Ghostly Past. Sarah researched her house's history at the local library. She found an old newspaper article about an elderly woman who had died in a fire in the house years ago. The woman was known for being eccentric and paranoid, often accusing people of stealing from her. Sarah was shocked to see that the photo of the woman in the article looked exactly like the figure on her security camera footage. Chapter 8. The Stalker. Sarah became convinced that the ghost of the old woman was stalking her. The tapping grew louder and more frequent, and the trinkets left on her doorstep became more unsettling. A tooth, a bloody scrap of fabric, and another note, "I'm coming for you." The police couldn't help. They still believed it was just a malfunctioning generator. Chapter 9. Fleeing for Safety. Desperate for safety, Sarah decided to leave the house. She packed her things and left town, hoping that putting distance between herself and the house would end the haunting. As she drove away, she felt a sense of relief. The tapping had stopped, and she thought she could finally move on. Chapter 10. The Twist. As Sarah drove down the mountain road, she heard a familiar tapping on her car window. When she looked over, she saw the old woman's grinning face reflected in the glass. The haunting hadn't ended. It had followed her. The real horror wasn't the house. It was the old woman's ghost, and she wouldn't stop until she had Sarah in her grasp.